or not one.
There we
Okay,
go.
Edie, welcome back to my channel, May Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we are back for another episode of Page Chewing, the first of 2023. I am here with my co-host, P.L. Stuart, author of A Drowned Kingdom. Unfortunately, our other co-host, Steve from Steve Talks Books, couldn't be with us today, but he will be missed. And our first guest of 2023, I am so happy to announce, is none other than Philip Chase, who in my head I have dubbed Booktube's professor without his consent. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little self-introduction about who you are, maybe how you found yourself with us today.
Okay. Well, thank you, Taylor, for that lovely introduction. And it's so wonderful to be here with you and with PL. And I really have enjoyed my discussions with both of you in the past. I'm so lucky to have had both of you on my channel before, as well as Steve, whom I missed. I was looking forward to catching up with Steve, but I'm sure he has good reasons for not being here. Yeah, so I'm basically a booktuber who talks about fantasy. That is my passion. I love fantasy. And my day job is that I am a professor. I'm an English professor, and my graduate studies, I specialize in medieval literature. So particularly Old English and some Old Norse, Middle English. So that's kind of me, I guess. Yeah, it's just so lovely to be here with you guys. And I'm looking forward to following where the conversation takes us.
As Page Chewing always does.
Yep.
Yes, and I do want to make sure before we really start the episode that I shout out the series that both PL and I, and as well as Steve, were on Philip's channel, which is Dear Dr. Fantasy. If you haven't checked it out, please do. It's an interview show like this, so if you like this type of long form content, you will love it. Just have a couple people popping into the chat. Hey, how's everyone doing? Hi, thanks for stopping by.
Shad, thanks for stopping by. Great guy.
Excited to see what our professor says today. Yes. Eddie says,
hey,
hi.
Eddie, how's it going? Another great fella, Eddie.
Alex here.
Oh, Anita.
Here. Hello.
Anita's lovely. Yeah, Anita.
All right, so we have so many things we want to pick your brain about, but we'll start with just a few. The first one being with your history in academia, and you're very well read in general. We were wondering if that history affects what you choose to read, because Booktube also has a large effect on what people pick up. I noticed since I started a Booktube channel, what I read has changed drastically because of the types of reviews I get and the people I've met. But you have an interesting cross-section of two kinds of influences here. So we were wondering if academia has an effect on that, and if it does, to what extent?
That's a great question. I would say the answer is definitely yes, that this combination, I guess, of my interests and experiences, and that's probably true for everybody when they decide what to pick up when they read. Your experiences and everything will inform that decision. I think when I started my channel, one of the things I wanted to do was to explore how fantasy is worthy of critical exploration. And that was a desire that definitely stemmed from my academic background, and a desire to show, and by doing it, that fantasy is worthy of critical exploration, that there's so much rich material in fantasy, and this had such a range of material in fantasy, but some that is you could write dissertations about easily, and you could produce all kinds of scholarship on, but also just to explore how fantasy as storytelling plays a vital role for so many people. I think that it's the most ancient form of storytelling, actually, fantasy is, if you take a broader definition of it. And obviously, I think it is something that is essential for the human imagination, that it needs to stretch. Don't we need to stretch our imaginations? Just like we need to take care of our bodies, we need to take care of our imaginations. And I don't know any other genre that is as conducive to that as fantasy. So I think fantasy is deserving of all kinds of exploration and celebration. And that was the motivation behind my channel. And I think you can hear where there's a sort of an academic twist to my approach, because I emphasize critical exploration. I tend to talk a lot about themes when I do reviews and that sort of thing, which is not necessarily what everybody likes to do when they review. So that probably, my approach definitely is informed by that background.
I just muted myself instead of unmuted. Apologies there. noob mistake. We just had a couple comments to add to that, which is Booktube's professor.
Oh dear.
I think I might have started something.
You never know how these things happen. It's similar to how I got the Dr. Fantasy nickname too.
We have Andrew saying, yes, it's so nice to see the shift in academia, allowing fantasy to be criticized and consumed. Yes, I want to agree with that, definitely. One of the first videos I ever made on my channel, back when I didn't have a background, I was just sitting in a corner of my room. It's probably one of the first 3 videos I ever made. There's a fantasy book tag, get to know the fantasy reader. And there's a question there that says, like, what do you want to say to people who don't read fantasy, kind of thing. And I went off on a rant about how, you could probably still find it on my channel, but about how fantasy is looked down upon in academia in general. I was a linguistics major, so it was a bit of a different world, but still, you know, crossed paths with a lot of the literature majors. And what do you think Shakespeare is, is what I wanted to ask those people. I think it's Macbeth that starts with witches stirring a cauldron and cackling. Like, could you get more fantasy?
Well, even, Shakespeare ripped off the plots of all of his plays except for 2. And those he stole. I mean, people did that back then. There was no, copyright or whatever. So he basically did not make up the bones of all of those plays. He took them from other places, but he did make up 2. 2 entirely sprang from his imagination, and they are the most fantastic of his plays by far. One is The Tempest, and the other is A Midsummer Night's Dream. So I think that should tell you something as well. The fact that what sprang from Shakespeare's own mind emerged as fantasy. I think that, one of the greatest storytellers ever chose fantasy when he wanted to exercise his own imagination.
Absolutely. And coming from Shakespeare made up words all the time too. So he's very creative mind,
That's for sure. Yeah. As a linguist, I think you can appreciate that, how few people have made up words that have stuck, and Shakespeare made up so many, right?
And some of them are so silly. I'm like, I'm glad that one didn't stick. I can't think of an example right now, but sometimes I read his plays and I'm like, I don't know about that one.
Shakespeare is kind of also, for me, again, like we all have a similar background, being an English major and medieval history minor. Shakespeare was, for me, the real true, I don't want to say modern because obviously it's somewhat ancient now, a historical fiction writer. He took, very politicized to please, of course, the monarch of the day, especially because of the relationship between that monarch's family and the particular royal genealogies he's writing about, basically very much embellished, especially the War of the Roses. I think that stands out more than anything else. And, essentially is responsible for vilifying, in particular, Richard III, who has this extremely, actually, I believe, unearned reputation as being this Machiavellian, figure, where historically he may or may not have been that. But Shakespeare, again, because of his link, to Elizabeth and wanting to, write something that would, appeal to her sensibilities in terms of, the politics of the day. And he, I'm sure he wanted to keep his head. So he wrote to, he painted one side of a particular group of royals as the bad guys, and the other ones as the good guys. So I think he's for me he's one of the first great historical fiction writers as well.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. And fantasy. I mean, you can't get
Yeah.
more fantasy than the fairies and everything that he
Mhm.
introduces in the Midsummer Night's Dream and in the Tempest. So yeah.
Yeah. This might be a difficult question to answer, so if you don't have an answer, that's fine. But from what you've read in fantasy, if you were to pick one or two series that you would want to see in a regular curriculum,
Ooh.
maybe if we were talking high school level, let's say high school level, because those books haven't changed in ages, and I think that they could do with an overhaul. I personally have a vendetta against Catcher in the Rye, so maybe that's my bias coming out. But if you could choose one or two fantasy series to see integrated into that kind of high school canon, do you have any that stick out in your brain?
So I only get one or two?
That's why I said it's a hard one. Maybe you can name a few. Let's make it an open number list.
Well, I love the question because I, in fact, have taught a fantasy novels course at the college level. And it's amazing what you can do with fantasy. I mean, we did it I'll just give you an example. I'm sort of eluding your question a little bit here, but I'll get back to it. One thing I did once in that fantasy novels course was we did a theme-based, we based the semester around the theme of imperialism in fantasy. So we were able to read R.F. Kuang's The Poppy War, for example. And we used Stephen Erickson's first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, Gardens of the Moon. And we were able to incorporate, I'm sure you guys could name a dozen between us great fantasy novels to explore the theme of imperialism. And it worked so well. It was so brilliant. I just loved it. And the students had so many insights, and it was just something that opened up the books in a critical way, in an analytical way. That's what we do in academia. We find an approach that opens up the text, and we explore that through that approach. And it worked so well in that class. So as you can imagine, there are so many themes that get explored in fantasy. So there are just a ton of novels. Now, some work better than others, I will admit. There are some writers who are very theme conscious, and Erickson and Kuang are both good examples, I think. Kuang was very deliberately exploring the theme of imperialism and colonialism in The Poppy War. So that worked really well. There are others that are popular, I guess, but they don't necessarily, at least in my experience so far, they don't teach as well. So like, for example, A Game of Thrones I love it. I think it's a great writing. I think Martin is extremely talented, but a lot of it is simply just spectacle. And there's not I might be wrong. Somebody might produce a great, analysis, a dissertation. Somebody's probably done one on A Song of Ice and Fire, but I don't think Martin was writing. And there are themes, of course. I'm not saying there are not themes, but I don't think he was writing theme first. I think he was writing more spectacle and characters and that sort of thing. So it tends to be the ones that are more theme conscious that teach in a classroom a little bit more easily, I think, that give you a little more meat to chew on. Does that make sense? So, and of course, there are some that have been done a lot, like Tolkien's, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. There's an abundance of scholarship. You can find a lot of stuff actually on Harry Potter. There's a lot of scholarship on Harry Potter, believe it or not. And so those work well because the students have to write a research paper. So you need to find sources and whatnot to incorporate into your paper. So those tend to work pretty well. There's so much to choose from, really. So it's a tough one to answer, and it does depend on your approach. If you want to do, an imperialism theme, I think some more modern fantasies work really well. If you want to do more of a hero's journey type theme for the semester, then yeah, The Hobbit is great, or Lord of the Rings, or some of the classics. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's sort of a long-winded answer, I think. But
No, we love those here.
okay, good.
We love those here. Yeah.
Yeah, some fascinating themes, especially imperialism. Obviously, that's a theme that's near and dear to my heart. And funny that you mention Martin again, because another writer who was very much inspired by Shakespeare and the War of the Roses,
Oh yeah.
and Tolkien. So, and I think, if I may be so bold with Martin, I'd love, it'd be great to, who knows, maybe we'll have him on page showing one day. We can ask him ourselves, but wouldn't that be something? But I think, yeah, aim high. I think one of the themes that really stood out for me in Martin's work was the simple randomness of fate, and how the people you expect to rise or rule, don't get there or fall short or have more brief, abrupt endings than you think, and you think they're going to be the hero, and then they turn out they don't make it. And I think that was and that's very reflective of life, right? And that's one theme that really stuck out to me with Martin in particular, who's one of my favorite authors. So
yeah, he's brilliant. He's really brilliant. I think with Martin, I pretty much assume anyone who's nice and a little bit naive is just fun, It's the ruthless, clever ones that make it in Martin. So
yes.
And somebody made a comment in there about, it was Anita. Le Guin, she's great.
Yes, I was just about to put that up. You have great timing.
Earthsea is very teachable, because Le Guin was very consciously exploring Taoism, for example, in The Wizard of Earthsea, and it's just a wonderful exploration of death. I don't know a better book for exploring the theme of acceptance of death. It's just fantastic for that. So yeah, Earthsea is a great example, Anita.
I haven't read any Le Guin, but I actually plan to rectify that this year. This is actually probably cheating, because I should do this homework myself. But something that I'd like to do this year is read a lot of older fantasy that predates me and when I started my reading journey, Le Guin being one of those. But I wonder if I could just take a moment to pick both of your brains. Is there a recommendation you have for me of an older fantasy that you think I should be picking up? So I hear a lot of like Gemmell talked about, and just there's a lot of authors that I hear discussed by people that I really respect their opinion, but I'm like, that was before my time, and I haven't read that. So I want to change that this year. So if I could cheat and do a little bit of my homework during this page doing episode, is there an older fantasy you would recommend for someone like me who grew up in the 90s, really started reading heavily late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah. So you hear that, PL? She's making us sound old.
Oh, it's the gray. The gray is giving us away, Philip. It's giving us away.
Unintentionally.
So, do you want to go first?
You're the guest. Please go first.
Oh, okay. Well, the first one that came to my mind, actually a couple. Let me throw out one. Eddie's example, Donaldson, Stephen Donaldson, I think he means, is fantastic. So the Thomas Covenant series, I would definitely vote for that. The first one that came to my mind is actually Mary Stuart, who wrote the Arthurian series with Merlin as a central character. The Crystal Cave is the first book. I can't remember all the titles of the next. I think there are 4 or maybe even 5 of them that she might eventually have written. It might have been originally a trilogy or something. But it's been many years since I read them, but I just remember loving her prose and thinking, wow, this is just so beautiful and magical, and just enjoying the immersion. I suspect that a lot of people would find her writing very slow today. But for a taste of an author who's just, I think, very talented and writes with this rich, beautiful prose, try Mary Stuart maybe. I don't see her talked about a lot on Booktube either. So I think it would be good to have a little attention given to her.
Okay, great. Consider it noted. Do you have something for me, Pio?
Yeah, I would Donaldson. I have to concur. One of the great writers that I read when I was quite young. I would also mention anything by well, now it's actually a writer who I'd never read that published his series quite a while ago, re-released it. I've read his first book recently. It is Masterclass in Grimdark. Ricardo Pinto, Stone Dance of the Chameleon. The first book, The Masters. It is just lush. The prose is it. I've never read prose that's so short. You know, it's clipped, but it's lush and it's rich, and the words just and it. But it is dark. It is dark, but it is phenomenal. So Ricardo Pinto, sorry, The Stone Dance Chameleon. Um, I would read anything by Guy Garvocay. Uh, you know, he his prose again is just phenomenal. Shout out another Canadian iconic writer. I would also say, now let's go back a bit. So we're going now into the more Tolkien, C.S. Lewis era, the 50s, 60s, 70s. I would say T.H. White. So anything by T.H. White, I would definitely start with The Once Future King. So that obviously is a Arthurian tale, and it's actually inspired directly. And some people might call it a knockoff of Le Morte d'Arthur, the famous by Sir Thomas Malory. The 14th, 15th century knight. So I would say T.H. White is another one of my faves, especially from school. And so yeah, I would say those ones are some that you definitely worth reading.
Thank you guys for doing my homework for me. um, we did have just a couple comments related to that. Hold on, where did it go? My apologies. Here we have
Lois
Bujold.
McMaster Bujold. Yeah.
Yes,
Bujold.
Eddie.
I think I'm actually not sure how it's pronounced. I've always said in my head Bujold, but
yeah. So have I. That's a great one, Eddie. That's a
great
one.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And Faye says, technically more sci-fi with fantasy elements, but Julian May is amazing. All right, noted. Thank you all. I appreciate that. I also wanted to make sure that we say hello to a couple people that I didn't get a chance to get their comment up when they first came, which is Layla. She said her meeting was canceled.
Wonderful.
And she's able to be here.
Oh, fantastic.
Yay.
Oh, Joanna.
Hello, Joanna.
One of our
also
favorites.
a wonderful booktuber. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
please go check her out. I want to get smarter while reading fantasy. I can understand that feeling. We also have Tadia here. Hello. Thank you for coming in. Now, we also had a question here from Alex, which is, do you feel that some academics' approach pushes people away from books? School is where some get their first reading experience, and the often pretentious approach to reading can push readers away.
Yeah. Am I supposed to answer that first? Yeah.
I would say you're most qualified.
The short answer is yes. And the long answer is, it is unfortunate that I think part of it is that we in the humanities often feel a need to somehow justify our existence, that somehow we're not as good as the sciences or the technical stuff, that we're impractical and wishy-washy and that sort of thing. And so that feeling of inferiority, unfortunately, sometimes, and I'm kind of psychoanalyzing all of this, but I think it might result in a bit of a over compensation and trying to show that, no, we're just like the sciences. We're very important. And, so unfortunately, I do think that it scars a lot of kids. I see so many of my students look at poetry, for example. I would venture to say that 80 to 90% of my students hate poetry. And they hate poetry because they had this awful experience in school where they were made to feel dumb because they didn't get the right interpretation of a poem, as if a poem is some kind of a puzzle that you have to solve and there's only one right answer. And that to me is just the most awful, soul-killing way that you can approach poetry or any literature. The idea that you have to, it's like math. There's an answer and you have to find it. And it's, again, it's that feeling that we have to be like the sciences. We have to be like, somehow there's one right answer. And that's just awful. And I think that that is something that a lot of kids just get the message that, okay, this stuff is awful. Maybe it's good for me somehow. Like, I don't know, like broccoli, but well, I should try it. But yeah, so just so many people end up not liking poetry and literature in general because of this overcompensation, trying to look like we're serious and all of that, when really I think a much more healthy approach to teaching poetry is to look at what the poem says to each individual and what can that individual's experiences bring to in a conversation, a collective discussion about that. And that can be so enriching. So when I tell my students, I don't want the right interpretation, I want your reaction, it really does open things up. And suddenly I'll have students who tell me, wow, I actually like this. And I find this to be fun. And Taylor, you're in linguistics. Poetry is so much about language. And
yes,
it's such a great way to play with language.
Yes.
And I think they realize that. And they realize that there's such joy in that play.
Mm-hmm. That was the exact word I was going to use, is play. It's a way to play with linguistics. That's what poetry is. So even as someone who has favorite poems from when I was in school, I'm not, a poetry buff by any means. But in high school, I also felt like I was going to be wrong, for sure, even as someone who had fostered a love of reading already. So I think you make a really good point there. And I also think your point of comparing not just literature, but for lack of a better word, I really don't like this phrasing, but the softer sciences or that kind of thing with STEM, I think you really hit a key chord there, because the beauty of softer sciences is that it explores the grayness, right? So it's really a shame that we kind of strip that away in order to present it as something that it's not. Now, I understand the feeling of not wanting to just sound like it's all about feelings and that's all that matters. I understand that desire, but right. I do think you've really hit the nail on the head in that some of the essential parts of it have been stripped away in order to present it as something not gray, which it is, because humans are gray. So
true. Yeah. And I think people like Shakespeare would have been baffled to hear the way in which he is revered today as some kind of uncomprehendable prophet or sage or something. And the guy wanted to put butts in seats. He was trying to entertain people, right? I mean, he was also doing some philosophy in there and that sort of thing. But I think he would have been astounded to know that today he's somehow held up on this pedestal, which makes him inaccessible. No wonder kids don't like reading Shakespeare,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you'd say that, because again, Shakespeare has been figured prominently in our discussion so far.
Yeah.
That, for me, the beauty of Shakespeare has been about three facets. One, the language, and yes, it's archaic, and yes, some people by virtue of that may think it's inaccessible because when it was written and the words that he uses, but just beautiful. The prose, the Shakespeareisms, the witticisms, the sayings, the things that have come out of his plays that are axioms today, right? And pretty famous ones. And I think again, you touched it before, Philip, the themes. Right, and Shakespeare has so many compelling themes in his writing. So it's a shame if, because people, as you said, they esteem Shakespeare to this point where he's undecipherable, and it's too complicated to read, and That's why we have Cole's notes to figure Shakespeare out, because you can't figure him out by just reading it. And cheat sheets, and it's unfortunate because I think for a lot of people, if they just read it, kind of like the Bible, if you just read it, you're going to find your way through, but that's an excellent point about Shakespeare. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Is that what you call it up in Canada? We call it Cliff Notes, or we used to.
Yeah.
It's
now
Cole's
Spark Notes online, right?
Yeah.
It's Cole's after Cole's the bookstore, so it's Cole's Notes, and
I
they're
see.
for many books that people have a hard time, especially scholastically, interpreting. You have these cheat notes, so
yeah. When you said something notes, I assumed it was the equivalent of Spark Notes, or those saved my butt in high school. Just to say, even as an avid reader, I used them liberally. So I know I'm exposing myself.
It's okay.
We had here first-time live viewer
Oh,
in the UK.
hello, Danielle.
So
welcome, Danielle. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, she actually made some very interesting points here, actually, on the topic we're on now. This was Evie. This is Evie. Apologies. Danielle made a comment later, which I'll put up. But oddly enough, because I was such a poor English I think, such a poor English education during my high school years, the academic critiques of my readings during college made me fall in love even more with reading. And that kind of rings true for me as well. I think, Philip, when Dear Dr. Fantasy, I talked about the professor who really reignited my love for classics in university. I was not an English major, but I loved his teaching so much. I took all of his classes. And
he's the one that wanted you to be an English major, which is such a huge compliment.
Yes. Yes, he kept asking me. He's like, "Have you switched?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, linguistics has my heart, But I think having a teacher that allows those critiques, to Evie's point, is very key. And then Danielle's comment was, I stopped reading other than HP completely as a teen because it felt like I was being forced to read. I hated poetry in school and dreaded that section of the exam. I started again as an adult. Yeah. So there's a casualty of the system that you just mentioned, but we're glad to have you back, Danielle.
Absolutely.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Faye also just added a little bit more, saying it 100% pushed my husband away from reading. He didn't get into reading until 18 when I started recommending books to him. Yeah.
Well, he's lucky to have had you then.
Yes, definitely. That's wonderful. That's a wonderful story. Yeah.
Yes. I think there was one more here. Yes, Faye made one more good point I wanted to put up. For some reason, we have this idea as a society that older books are in some way superior. This giving kids a selection of books that are in no way capable of or interested in relating to said content, that they are in no way capable or interested in relating to said content. That is a good point too.
Yeah, I think that what can happen is this notion that certain books have stood the test of time, right? And they have proven themselves as great literary works. We've been talking about Shakespeare. We could throw in, Dante or Chaucer or Milton, or notice that they're all men. Did you notice that? And the interesting thing about
what a quinky dink.
Yeah, what a quinky dink. The thing there is, I think when we think of the canon, right, as some rigid, solidified thing, we can be blind to the fact that certain voices were definitely have been privileged in the past, and that the emphasis has been on those voices. When we start looking a little bit more closely and finding other voices from those time periods, we might discover some great literature too. And that has been happening a lot in the last few decades, for sure. Thank goodness. So I guess I would be supportive of that comment as well. And there are all kinds of great works being produced today. So it is important, I think, to have a little bit more of an open mind and not to think of literature as this walled off portion that is the canon, that is somehow better than everything else, and everything outside of the canon is in some kind of, wasteland of worthless fiction. So yeah, I definitely appreciate the spirit of that comment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The tumbleweeds area, right? It's outside of the canon.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, all those, for example, the authors that Philip mentioned, they're looking back to the classics, the Plato's, the Sophocles, the Dante's, then and more men again, right? Where, so you have men looking back, you have old men looking back at older men.
And they're all white men. All
Yes.
white men. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can totally understand and appreciate why, especially if young people are not seeing themselves, and are not seeing literature that is written by people that they can relate to, why that becomes problematic in terms of them maintaining interest and engagement in literature. And I think it was one of my professors said that best. He was British and I loved him, and he was your very stereotypical smoked a pipe and wore like a cravat, and he was really funny and eccentric and witty. But he said to himself that it's not just the people that look like me who write good books and who are an authority on good books. And I really respected him for that. And and that's something we need to remember when we're talking about generations that were born certainly after the 1990s, and how they relate to their relationship with reading and literature. So
so let's celebrate all kinds of voices. There's so many.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also say that saying what you just said there, Philip, does not mean that the canon is trash. It's not. And I think two things can be true at once is one of the things I really like to remind people.
I would be in trouble. I'd be in trouble if we, I'm a medievalist. A lot of the stuff that I studied is anonymous. So I guess I'm safe, right? Yeah.
There we go. No one knows.
It's that struggle. I spoke about this with Natanya Barron, who, if anybody knows Natanya, she is wonderful. A phenomenal writer, a medievalist herself. She is a social media influencer. She has this wonderful feature called Thread Top, which examines the relationship between clothing, especially medieval clothing fabrics, and things like colonialism and imperialism. And one day she made a comment about that actually made me cry about admitting how, as much as she this really complex relationship with loving something, but yet understanding the harm and the damage that it's done especially in terms of the appropriation of certain fabrics and things like that from European cultures, especially to Eastern cultures, and but yes, we can love something and still see its flaws and the things that perhaps don't work as well, especially for other people. So I think, as you said, that's really important to keep in mind.
And I do see change in that regard as well. We talked earlier about how fantasy is getting more respect and attention in an academic setting. And it's certainly the case. I think that we have seen a lot more acceptance of a variety of authors from all kinds of backgrounds, which is wonderful. I mean, it's changed the way, even within my lifetime of teaching, I've been teaching for about 25 years. If you were to compare my syllabus from Intro to Literature 20 years ago to what I do today, my syllabus is way more diverse than it used to be. And I'm very happy about it. And honestly, it's better because more of my students, as you were saying before, Taylor, more of my students are seeing themselves in the stories than used to be the case. Because I would live in New Jersey. It's a very diverse place. So I have students from all over the place, all over the world. And it's important to me that two things be accomplished, that when we read these stories, one, that my students see themselves in them, but also two, that they see other people. And guess what? It's great for the folks who, like me, grew up reading a lot of white male literature. to be exposed to other perspectives. It's so healthy, it's so liberating, and it's so wonderful. So I think it's accomplishing both of those things.
Definitely. This is an older comment, but I just want to make sure I give credit to people who are coming by, that always come by. So Fazila is here, just to make sure
Hi, how are you
coming
doing?
by. We also have Crystal Matar.
Oh,
Here.
We're
Hello.
not worthy. Crystal Matar.
We're not worthy.
Brilliant
Yes.
writer. Brilliant writer. Legacy of the Brightwash.
Yes. Yeah, I got to shout the name of her book out there. I scream about it on my channel, so anyone here has probably heard me talk about it. There was also a very interesting comment here from Anitha about India's curriculum. She said, we didn't have this concept of reading fiction as part of school in India. We only had Trojan War in sixth grade, Hound of the Baskerville in 10th, and some story about the Moonstone. I love that book, with the Moonstone in 12th. I loved them, and I wanted more. I always appreciated this concept of reading fiction books and writing essays, maybe because we didn't have that.
Wow. And you have so many great writers from India too. Some like Tagore, who wrote in their native languages, and others like Rushdie, who write or Ghosh. There's so many great writers from India who write in English and in Hindi and in other languages. So it's just, wow, those should be read, I think, over there in the education system. They should be celebrating those great writers. But, and I think everything she named there was from outside of India, which is...
I believe so. We can pull it back up just to double check. We have, Trojan War, Hound of the Baskervilles, and the Moonstone. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I really like that the Moonstone was called Something About a Moonstone. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And now we have all these marvelous, Eastern authors, the Zamil Akhtars, the Gaurav Bharantis, this new wave of phenomenal, and between them, bridge that gap, the Samit Basus, and there's such a wealth of great writing. From that is not European, Western centered, right? Fiction, fantasy, that, as Philip said, is just so lush that So big shout out to Zamil Akhtar, Gunmetal Gods.
Yes.
Oh,
another favorite of the channel.
Yes.
Of the series.
Yes.
And finally, here we have, it's interesting because in Spain we read a load of Spanish classics. So all the books that everyone reads in the UK, where I'm from, no one has read in my school here.
Yeah, and then there's another rich literary tradition there in Spain, of course.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, Philip, you're a busy man. You are an academic. You're a professor. You have a wonderful family, a very rich, enriched life. Is there anything else going on special that you might want to talk about on the channel?
Such a subtle transition.
Not so subtle.
Oh my goodness.
I thought maybe we could talk about A Drowned Kingdom.
No, this isn't what this shows. This is about you. Well, you had your turn when I was on your channel. Now you're on, Taylor's
Which
channel.
was, by the way, a wonderful conversation. And I'm so excited to read A Drowned Kingdom.
Thank you.
Because when you talked about the themes that you were incorporating there, there they are. I was just so captivated. And I feel like when I get to that, it's going to be an enriching read for sure. So,
thank you so much. I'm honored. But I will turn the tables. This is about you, not my work. So again, is there anything you'd like to share with us or talk about that's going on with you recently?
Well, I think you were subtly hinting, perhaps, that
mayhaps
you are hinting that we might talk a little bit about this announcement that I made yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah.
Although I've sort of been leaking this information here and there and other places for a little while, but yeah, I'm publishing my trilogy. this year. Yeah, thank you.
Yay!
And when I say I'm publishing my trilogy this year, I mean I'm publishing all 3 books this year. And this is nearing the end of a journey that I started 18 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, by drawing a map that summer of 2004. And I began writing after I drew the map. So it's been more than 18 years of working on this. Although I shouldn't give them the wrong impression. I haven't been writing year round all the time. I have to teach. And so I get too busy during the semesters at certain points to do any writing. But so we're definitely mostly in the summers and winter breaks. But chipping away. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, at the end of this, or near the end of this journey, and I am going to be putting out the first book in March 21st, and the second is June 21st, and the third is going to be September 21st. And so there were 3-month gaps in between the publication dates there, and that's really mainly just to get the formatting done and the cover and cover design and all that stuff that I'm having to learn so much about now. And that stuff takes time. The artist needs time and all of that. So yeah, so that's I'm putting them out about as fast as I can for people. And I hope that that's helpful for the reading experience to be able to put them out fairly rapidly. I know that's kind of unusual, but I know that when I read a series, I don't like waiting for a year or two, for the next installment, right? So hopefully that pleases some people.
Wow. Massive congratulations. We are so excited. I have to admit, again, I got teary-eyed watching your announcement. Just the joy on your face, just we were all, the whole book community is just so happy for you. Can you, for those of you who perhaps don't know something about your series, I know obviously without any spoilers, can you tell us a little bit what it's about? You've decided to put out a trilogy. Can you talk a bit about it?
Sure. Yeah. So it is the Edan trilogy. And if you're curious, the Edan is the name of a god. So this is the background of it, is a religious war. There is a religious war going on, a war of conversion, if you will, conversion by the sword and by the fang. And
you're already speaking my language.
Yeah, we're like, when can I press buy?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. So yeah, and I'm trying to look at it from the perspective too, because I have a great deal of respect for religion. I grew up in a very religious household, son of a minister, in fact. So I know the wonderful things that religion can do for people and how they sustain people and get people through life. Historically, though, of course, we've seen a lot of atrocities committed in the name of religion, and by people who are very sure that they know they're in the right, and that even they have justification, divine justification for the atrocities they commit. So I'm looking at that, and we talked about themes earlier. A theme that I'm looking at is really, and I'm interested in just from my own life, and I think it's an important theme because I believe that we all need to accept everyone else's humanity in order for our species not only to thrive, but to survive. I really believe that. I think that we have evolved through time with these small circles of our in-group, right? And whatever's outside of that little in-group is bad or wrong or the enemy or what have you. And maybe you could argue at some stage or evolution that was necessary for those little groups to survive, right? But I think we need to outgrow that. We need to get to a point where we accept and respect and love the humanity in all people and all creatures. We need to respect all creatures too. It really, I don't think we should be so human-centric either. So what I'm fascinated by is this idea of people who are convinced that they are in the right and that whoever is different from them is wrong and bad, and they need to be either converted or gotten rid of, right? And so I have this religious war going on, and I have people on one side of this war, and frankly, they're the baddies, although they don't think they are. They think that they're the good people, right? Of course. And then, of course, you have people who are on the other side of that, who are trying to survive and who are doing what they can to preserve not only their culture, their religion, but their lives in the process. So I have a female character, a sorceress, who is very important for this gathering resistance. And I have another character who is sort of accidentally thrown into the midst of all this, who, through a chance encounter, is kind of cursed. But that curse can actually end up being something very powerful. And so this particular character, he may play a role in how this whole thing unravels. So that's kind of like a basic explanation of a setup, I guess, if you will. Yeah.
Consider me sold.
Yeah.
I think Taylor and I are salivating here over the. I'm being quite honest here. This isn't false praise or flattery. This book sounds exactly up my alley. I don't think I'm exaggerating here. Taylor knows me well. She knows what I write. Like, this is exactly what I would love to read based on your little elevator pitch there. And I'm so excited. Well, this, I sense maybe some shades of R. Scott Bakker, maybe some, please correct me here. And I'd love to hear about what's inspired your writing, like perhaps some Erickson, is that, am I on the right track here?
Well, those are two great Canadian writers, of course. But I've just started reading Bakker. So I can't actually claim Bakker as an influence. I think Baker's work is much darker than mine. And I just filmed a video on Baker's Prince of Nothing trilogy today. So I have thoughts. I admire his writing tremendously. He's enormously talented, but he does really emphasize the grotesqueness and the hypocrisy, moral bankruptcy, selfishness of humanity. He reminds me in some weird ways of Jonathan Swift, actually, because in Gulliver's Travels, yeah, you agree, right?
That's great comparison. That's great comparison.
Yeah, very much like Jonathan Swift, because of some people think that Swift just hates humanity. I don't think so. Otherwise, why bother to write anything? But the view of humanity is pretty bleak. And I tend to be much more, I think in my DNA are writers like Tolkien and Le Guin, who also saw, the grim aspects of life and the world and the suffering. But there's a lot of beauty as well, I think, and even at times nobility that they saw in humanity, or the potential, at least, for nobility and sacrifice and beauty. So I tend to be more like, I think, on their side of things when it comes to my emphasis and my portrayal of humanity. I recognize that Bakker is brilliant, and he's not wrong about his assessment in some ways, but I also think that even if we don't have free will, and I don't think Bakker thinks we do, I think it's better to act like we do. And in a way, it's sort of this very Old English, Old Norse kind of courage in the face of certain doom. Maybe we don't have any free will, but damn it, let's just act like we do and do what we can, to be as courageous and heroic as we can. So yeah, I would say Bakker's definitely not an influence, but Erickson too it's interesting because I started reading Malazan after I wrote the first two books. So if there's any influence from Malazan, it would probably be in the third book. And I see it there, I think. I'm not sure how obvious it would be to anyone, but I think Erickson's emphasis on compassion is something that I probably even unconsciously took to heart and incorporated in my third book as well. Although I think I was exploring it before, but perhaps I was doing it in a way in the third book that was more deliberate. But yeah, so Tolkien, Le Guin are definitely strong influences for me. But I also read, before writing my own fantasy, I read Martin, and I had started to read. As I was writing, probably I read writers like Joe Abercrombie and Mark Lawrence, N.K. Jemisin, probably a little bit later, but yeah, I read her as well. So, but the ones that are just in my DNA that they probably come out in ways I don't even understand would be Tolkien and Le Guin.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I'll definitely be having I'm only up to Memories of Ice actually in Malazan. So you mentioned the third book, Memories of Ice. So I'll be looking for that when I dig into your world. So we understand that you're publishing these 3 books, and we also understand that you've decided to self-publish these 3 books. We had an interesting discussion on your channel when I was on Dear Dr. Fancy about some of the merits and downsides of self-publishing versus traditional. Can you tell us a bit about that and your journey and why you elected to self-publish?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I would
also like to just tack on to that question,
sure.
the decision to do all 3 in 1 year, because I saw you did touch on that, but I'm trying to find the comment. Someone had commented, I think it was Faye, saying that her binge reading heart is happy with that news because it's very rare for people. So I just wanted to tack on to that decision as well. What led to that?
Yeah. Oh, I see that I conjured Jimmy by mentioning R. Scott Baker.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring that. I'll bring up his thing after we drill you on self-publishing.
Sure. Yeah.
Interesting thoughts.
Actually, it was PL that conjured Jimmy. I think PL had mentioned Baker first. Yeah. I had an agent that is just a wonderful human being, and it was a huge step in my writing journey to have somebody, a professional in the industry, who's got all kinds of very huge titles under his name, and some fantasy as well. But he was just so generous in saying to me initially, look, I really love what you've given me. I want to take you on. And I do have some things that I want you to work on. And so he wasn't just I'll sell your book and make some money off of you. He actually helped me to improve the books. And gave me some just very broad, I guess, editorial suggestions that I worked on, and came back to him. And we had some really great dialogue, and he helped me to make the story stronger. So I worked with him for quite a few years, actually. And it was a very enriching experience. And ultimately, he tried to make a pitch this year, or last year, I guess it is now, 2022. He made a pitch. I want to say it was around March or April. And the publishing industry is very slow, as you probably know right now. It's slower than ever. Post-pandemic, there's just been a lot of factors at play there. But suffice to say that it's very slow. So we just waited until the end of the year. And when that rolled around, and we were starting to hear back from various editors who were very nice, by the way, in their feedback. They were just very complimentary. I don't know if they always do that, but they were extremely complimentary. But whatever I was writing wasn't what they were looking for. I guess they have very particular stories that they're looking for. And so I wasn't a match in this case. And so I was, I'm fine with that. And there's going to be other options, right? These days, as you know, there's a very rich world of self-publishing. So I always knew that was going to be a likely option. And I was always kind of sort of half thinking about it anyway. And so I'd already done some homework and I'm well aware. I think PLU and I talked a lot about this when I had you on Dear Dr. Fantasy. The advantages of self-publishing are really tremendous. Obviously I tried traditional. I would have valued feedback from an editor at a publishing house. I would have been thrilled not to have to, go through all the steps that I'm going through right now, which is a lot of technical work, a lot of formatting, which I'm not necessarily good at. I'm having to learn stuff. So I would have been spared all that, but I would have sacrificed probably some creative freedom. I would have sacrificed the ability to say, I want to put three books out in 1 year. I don't think they would have let me do that. So I get to work with an artist that I love working with, a dear friend of my daughter's, actually, from college. I've known this person for years, and I love their art. And so I'm really excited about the covers. And I found a wonderful person to do the map for me. I love maps. So I'm really excited about working with Jack for the maps. He's doing a map that's appearing in a special edition of First Law. So I already knew, okay, he knows maps and he makes them look beautiful. So yeah, I get that freedom, and it's really great. And I'm so happy. Now, you asked about why 3 in 1 year. That's something I decided on because I want to give people who want to read the books the best possible reading experience. And as I said earlier, I don't like waiting a year for the next book. And I figure that there are even some people who probably wouldn't want to buy a first book until the series is out there, because a few of us have been burned a little bit by certain authors. Jimmy knows who I'm talking about.
No names.
Yeah, nameless.
Who shall remain nameless. Whose books, by the way, I'm happy to have read regardless.
Yes.
I will, even if A Song of Ice and Fire is never finished, even if King Killer Chronicles never finished, I'm glad I read those books. I loved reading those books. So, no complaints here. But I know that some people are wary of that. So I'm able to say, hey, I have this trilogy done. I'm going to give it to you all this year. So you don't have to worry about me pulling a Martin or a Rothfuss on you.
Not to name names, but to name names.
Yeah.
Whoops, we did name a couple.
Oopsies.
I would argue that you have an enormous strategic tactical advantage. And yes, I totally agree. Will definitely enhance your reader's pleasure by putting out successively 3 books in a series and completing your series in a year. That I don't know if you have plans for box sets, but I think that's going to really help your sales. I totally suggest box sets down the road, but maybe we can talk about that offline someday. But
yeah.
I believe that, Philip, you're achieving what most writers like myself are totally envious of. Would be totally envious of the fact that you're able to publish your entire series in a year, and that people will, as you said, go and buy your entire series potentially because they don't have to wait. I think that's an incredibly smart, savvy business decision, frankly.
Well,
dividends.
I wish I could claim to be smart and savvy, but it's really more a product of the fact that I've been working on them for 18 years and that I'm old. So, yeah, and I actually have a standalone sequel written, which I need to edit it. I want to edit it some, but I already have a standalone. I've written 4 books actually in 18 years, not 3. But yeah.
Well, kudos to you because sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment about the box set idea, just because a comment earlier asked if you were going to make an omnibus edition. Like an example of that, it's just off screen, but Tom Dumbrell just released an omnibus edition of The Pillars of Peace.
Okay.
Beautiful covers. Beautiful, stunning covers.
Yeah, through the broken binding, who has taken all of my money, but this is what it looks like. And he had some great sales because he decided to package it in this way. Yeah. So someone had asked earlier if you were considering like an omnibus, like a deluxe kind of edition of it.
I'm not sure it
will
would
be
fit.
available.
It's
Okay.
pretty. So the first book is not that long for fantasy. It's 165,000 words. The second book is probably around 220,000 words, and the third book is 240,000 words. So that gets pretty chunky, I think. If you want to translate into a trade paperback, that the first book will probably be about 460 pages. Yeah, 460 pages or so. And the second will be, obviously, I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't gotten there, but it'll be longer, like over 500, I would expect. Maybe closer to 600, really. And then the third, probably more like 700 pages, 750 maybe. But somewhere in that zone. So all those pages together, I'm not sure would fit in one omnibus. I don't think so.
I've seen omnibuses bigger than that have done quite well. And I look at it this way. That's about, the size of 2 Brandon Sanderson books, potentially, if that.
Yeah.
2 George R. R. Martin books, I mean, it's not as long as you think.
Yeah.
So, but I think
2,000 pages. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think it's phenomenal.
This up just for reference. Brightwash is 22K and it's 660.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. That's exactly what my second book would be then. Yeah. So there's a pretty good guess, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it depends on formatting.
It does. Yeah. So I'm talking about, and I'm sure that Crystal was talking also about a trade paperback. Obviously, if mass market would be more pages. So, yeah.
But that is absolutely wonderful. And, I've seen in your video that, I mean, we're also excited about this, Philip. We're all anticipating. We can't wait to read it. We've also seen that you've had some early, very highly acclaimed, people providing you blurbs for your book. Can you talk about some of that? I think the names will dazzle. That people that are endorsing your book are going to dazzle some people.
Well, I mean, I'm incredibly humbled and dazzled myself that these very kind people who are heroes to me would have taken the time to read my first book and write some kind words about them, about it. So Mark Lawrence was incredibly, I mean, the guy's just a super individual. I'm sure everybody here agrees. I mean, you don't start something like SPFBO because you're a meanie pants, right? I mean, he's such a nice guy, right?
Yeah.
So I feel just so grateful to him for everything he does. I don't know another author who has reached out a helping hand to other starting authors as much as Mark Lawrence has. I think he should be applauded universally for that. And he wrote a really incredibly gracious blurb for me, comparing the book to Tolkien and to Catherine Kerr and to John Gwynne, which just was like, okay,
Take that.
I'll take it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was really excited by that. And then another author who was so generous, speaking of John Gwynne, was John Gwynne. And I was so grateful to him, not only because I think of him as a kindred spirit, really. I mean, a lot of his influences are my influences. And I didn't grow up reading, obviously he's a much later writer than my childhood influences. But we read the same things growing up, including our very first fantasy series was Lloyd Alexander's Prydain Chronicles.
Love that.
Yeah. So, and he's a Tolkien nut, and he's into the Old Norse and Old English stuff. And so we are, I think of us as kindred spirits. I hope he wouldn't mind me describing him that way. But he wrote a very, very just wonderful blurb as well. And, Jenny Wirtz, Jenny Wirtz. wrote
Yes.
just so, I mean, I can't believe how insightful she is. I love hearing her talk about her own books. I could listen to her for hours and hours and hours. And so for her to bring that insightfulness to a tiny little blurb like that, where I felt like she just encapsulated so much of what the book is about and described it so perfectly, I was just floored by that. And it was just so kind of her. And Ian Esselmont. So I'm a huge Malazan, another Canadian for you, PL. You guys know that I'm a massive Malazan fan. And for Esselmont, the co-creator of the Malazan world and the author of so many just amazing atmospheric books, to write such kind words was just, again, so humbling and very grateful. So, yeah.
Philip, to have those luminaries put their name, and they would not be putting their name behind your work unless they had a high degree of respect for it, is just, that says a lot about you and how they think of your work. And I think that's a huge compliment, certainly, itself. So you must be over the moon with that. I know we are.
I was pretty happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've seen in recent times an author who's had a collection like that of writers write endorsements for their books that I can remember, certainly in the self-pub milieu recently. So, I mean, hats off to you. You're obviously, doing something right, and obviously your writing must speak for itself to some of great writers of our time. So,
yeah, I would definitely like to second that.
Thank you both. Yeah, that's It's very gracious of you, and to have people like that. Again, I just can't emphasize enough how touched I am by it too, and the support has been tremendous. And I really hope that there's AP.
the nemesis. The nemesis.
Yes,
it ought to be written.
He has arrived.
Yeah, well,
disappointed to hear that.
George
Fantasy
heard
as
me
it ought to
making
be
fun
written
of
will
him.
not be appearing on the cover. Apologies, I wanted to read that out.
George heard me making fun of him earlier, so he declined. So
can now that we have your famous nemesis here, for those of you who live under a rock, I guess, AP Canavan is a phenomenal booktuber, and has a very special relationship with Philip, which I hope we get to touch on as well. And I understand, Philip, that an AP is a masterclass editor, that he is the editor for your. Wow. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I'm very happy to. I'll embarrass him now that he's here. So, AP Canavan, if you guys don't know, and he's in the comments as a critical dragon, and he is, in addition to having a channel of his own, a absolutely brilliant developmental editor. He is the developmental editor, or I guess they call him an advanced reader, and he would be better at explaining the distinction there, but he is the advanced reader for Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont. So imagine somebody whose insights are so awesome that Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont turned to him for editorial help, and that's AP Canavan. So he's been so instrumental in my my writing and feeling like it's been ready, I guess, for people to read, and it's been a joy working with him. Really, it has. So it's a really cool thing to have a nemesis like that.
We have, so will you let AP out of your basement now? And the man himself saying, everything good about all the books is all Philip. Anything that doesn't work for you is clearly my advice that Philip mistakenly took.
That's unfortunately not quite true. There actually, I am so excited. There are particular scenes that, and I don't know how normal this is, but I don't care. There are particular scenes that are AP's suggestion that I am so excited to talk about when people get to them. I almost want to spill the beans now, but I'm going to wait. There are some very specific scenes that I feel AP. There are some that he made better with his suggestions, and then there are a couple that were just additions that I thought were brilliant, and I was able to work them in, and so he really helped me to really improve the books. Just incredibly generous human being. So
we also apologies. This is the one I wanted to put up first. Oh, that's not very nemesy.
Yes, I know. He's not very nemesis-y.
How dare you be kind to each other?
Yeah.
AP also says, I am trapped in the basement until Philip reaches a certain number of sales. Everyone needs to pre-order so I can finally see daylight again.
That is my best possible sales mechanism. Guys, you better buy the book or AP is going to be stuck.
We will definitely be pre-ordering. I can certainly speak for myself. I will be pre-ordering for sure.
Ahead of time. No shade to AP, but I was already convinced. So I did want to take the conversation back just a little bit to the content of your series that you had talked about, which is, for me, speaks to my reading heart. I think we're very similar in what we enjoy in books, which is a little bit of, some people might say naivete. I like to say hope in our books. I feel similarly to the way that you express that. But I did promise to put Jimmy's comment up after talking about Backer.
Oh, good.
When you were talking about the idea of free thought and how humans, maybe we should just pretend we have that, even if the truth is that we don't. And I just wanted to put this up it happened just after we talked about it, saying, I'd venture to say we have no choice but to act like we do. What other options are there? And
we have free will, in other words. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I think I should have given that more context. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we have to pretend that we have free will because we have no other options. And I just wanted to ask you if that's something that rings true for you as someone who has now written a trilogy that has this as a major theme in it, without giving away plot points or the ending of your series, of course. What are your thoughts on that comment from Jimmy?
Oh, I think he's right. I've described my books before as Beowulf meets Buddhism, and this is stemming from the fact that I am interested in how people, and this is part of what we were talking about before, religion and all of that, and how we respond to our mortality. And there have been lots of various answers to that question of our mortality. It's something clearly that is at the heart of being human, our awareness that we're mortal, that we're not going to be here forever, and that our loved ones are not going to be here forever. And I think that throughout our history, we've responded in various ways, and we have come up with institutions and systems of thought to help us struggle with this question. A lot of literature is about it. So I think that a lot of the times we write stories in order to help us give our lives meaning and patterns and a sense of purpose, that we engage with stories because they do show us patterns that make sense in the midst of all the suffering and the chaos that can assault us during our lives. So I am very much interested in exploring our response. Now, the Old English response, Beowulf, the Beowulf part of this, was, okay, we're going to die, so let's do great deeds while we're here, and maybe the bards will sing about us after we're gone, And there's this wonderful story in Cadman's The Ecclesiastical History of the English People. And PL knows the story, I can see. But it's essentially the story of the conversion of Northumbria, when King Edwin was approached by a missionary and was told about Christianity, and he decided to confer with his counselors, and one of them after they had debated for a while, said, life is like this. We're all sitting in the mead hall and we are listening to the bard sing a tale of our ancestors. And we're sitting around the fire and it's warm and we're together. Outside it's night and it's winter and it's cold and the wind is raging. But we are inside comforted by each other's company. And in one end of the hall, through the window, flies a sparrow. And it flits straight through the hall and then out the other end, out the other window, back into the outside. And that's life, that moment of together here in the firelight, in the warmth, together, making meaning, often through stories. What comes before is darkness. We don't know what it is. And what comes after is darkness. So their idea was, while we're here in this moment, do something meaningful, do something courageous and powerful, and, make a name for yourself, right? So that was the pagan ethos, I suppose, of the Germanic peoples in some way. Buddhism takes a slightly different approach to this. So in Buddhism, teaches a couple of very important things. One very important thing is that the idea of you as an individual is an illusion, right? You are not the individual you think you are. You are, in fact, part of a vast web of life. You are connected to all the life around you, not just all the people, but all of the life around you. You're part of that in a way that a wave is part of the ocean, right? You think you're a happy little wave, that you're somehow separate from everything, but really you're just part of the ocean, And the other thing is that life is fleeting. Everything doesn't last. You will not last. You will be gone. So that's the same recognition that you have in Old English poetry, is that we are fleeting. Our lives are fleeting. The responses are different, though, right? So the one response, the Old English response, is do great deeds, right? Whereas the Buddhist response is accept that you are fleeting, accept that you are part of everything, and that you live in everything. And these are different ways of coping with death, I think, that have been meaningful for various people, right? So I've completely forgotten what the original question was, but
I think you answered it very, very well there. But just the idea of us having free will and what we choose to do, whether we have it or not, and what we choose to do with that knowledge. And what I think is interesting about both of those solutions is, in a way, there is a sense of immortality there. It's a different goal, but it's immortality through stories in the way of doing great deeds, or it's immortality through your essence is not simply just yours. Your essence will live on through the nature of it being shared already. So I find that very interesting, that no matter what the answer is, it does seem to have a sense of immortality to it as a solution.
Yeah. I think so.
I absolutely love, if you're watching House of the Dragon at all, Corlys Velaryon talks about, what is this fleeting mortal life, but the pursuit of legacy, and history doesn't remember blood, it remembers names. And, I believe that as writers, Philip and I talked a bit about this on Dear Dr. Fantasy. We didn't go particularly on this track, but I think we're all seeking a bit of that piece of immortality in the books that we leave behind. I think one would argue that, the writers that we see as icons that are long gone, they live on, centuries after their death, centuries. And, are we trying to touch a bit of that, perhaps, somewhere in the back of our minds? I think so. I think that's a very human trait and emotion. I mean, other than, I think, our children, it's probably one of the few things that we actually do leave behind.
Yeah.
That's of any significance. So,
I think you're right. Yeah, Shakespeare's had a pretty good run. But the fact is, the Buddhist response is, you feel that way because you're attached to yourself, because you're living in this illusion that you have a self, that you are a self. And if you were to strip yourself of that illusion, you wouldn't fear death. You wouldn't need to live forever or for 500 years by leaving some monumental epic series behind. You would simply be at peace with the fact that you are part of the essence of the universe, that you are part of the ground of being. So I think that is in contradiction in a way to the Beowulfian response of doing something great so your name lives a little bit longer. The two are, and it's something that I've struggled with myself. I actually think that in a way, my trilogy is an expression of my struggle to somehow bring these two different approaches to mortality together. So if that makes any sense at all. Yeah.
It does. It very much does. Very much does.
Absolutely.
I wanted to just put Jimmy's up here. Yes, I'm right. Let's go. Let's see. We have Joanna says, my no self loves this no self talk, to go with the more Buddhist perspective. And then, of course, AP with the quip. Philip will last, though. We all know he made a demon pact, hence his youthful looks, despite being over 90 years old.
Yes, the portrait in my attic is looking much older than I am.
Yeah, it's a Dorian Gray situation. Okay.
Yeah, you got to hide it from view, though. Yeah. Don't let yourself look at it.
It's all the tennis. So that one video you posted of you're on the courts and
and I turned 50.
Yeah, looking fit and fabulous. So there you go. Right. Yeah.
I'm actually very eager to play tennis with AP.
Oh, AP's a tennis guy too?
Oh,
okay.
I mean,
okay.
Maybe.
Just one more tick on your board, for the next.
He promised to play with me next time we meet. He promised to play.
Okay. There you go. Well, I must say, Philip. I mean, you've assembled an all-star lineup of people in your corner, behind you.
There are more too. I haven't even told people about, actually, and I'm excited to tell people. I don't know. Can I tell people, Jimmy? Jimmy's going to help me too in a way that is just so wonderful, and I'm so grateful for his help. So I'll be talking about that as well. We haven't quite gotten started really yet, but Jimmy's going to do something really generous for me that I'll be shouting about later. But yeah, it is really important, I think, PL, to emphasize. I don't know how it is for every other writer, but definitely not for me, this idea of somebody on their own, just coming up with stuff out of their head and not having. I have been so inspired and helped by so many people that I can't even begin to name all of them. And it's really, our stories are not just our individual selves, but they're a product of so many interactions, so many other people, and some people helping in much more direct ways, and some helping in ways they won't even know about. So, yeah.
Yeah, and definitely, you're such an esteemed member of the Booktube community and the general writing community, but now you're going to be a member of, the author community and the self-published specifically community. And I can certainly say that, as I've talked about with many authors of traditionally published, self-published, you're totally right, Philip. We don't write in isolation. We certainly don't succeed in isolation. The actual physical writing may be more of a initially more solitary endeavor. However, with beta readers and editors and trusted readers and ARC readers and endorsement readers, and people supporting you, it is a very communal effort for a writer to make a book and to be enjoying a modicum of success. And I have zero doubt, based on that, if that's the formula, because you are beloved, and who wouldn't be willing to help and support you and support your work, that you will definitely be highly successful as an author, independent or otherwise. And I have a prediction, perhaps I'm wrong, But I'm wondering if maybe, especially since if you're self-publishing completely, your first book may be eligible, that it gets entered in SBFBO perhaps down the road. And I have this sneaking suspicion. I mentioned this when I put in the Ultra Fantasy. And the option is up to you. You may stay self-published, but I have a feeling that the publishers that didn't bite on your work are going to regret it, and that they're going to have people knocking on your door, traditional publishing houses knocking on your door at some point to publish your work. That's just a prediction, but that's
one we would love to see come to fruition, of course.
And of course, Jimmy writes, "I hope these books are good. I don't want to have to roast you."
Right.
But PL, you're gonna get me all teary-eyed here. It was really
He's good
something.
at that.
I know he is good at that. Actually, the truth is, I published this video yesterday where I made this announcement, and I was pretty nervous because I thought, well, what if just a few people watch this, and it seems like And I was blown away, not by the number of views, but by the number of comments and what's in the comments. I was so touched by the comments that I actually broke down in tears while I was reading the comments on the video. It was really tremendous. I realized just how important being part of the community is, and this has been a very special community for me. I'm so happy that at the end of this particular journey, this 18-year journey, I'm near the end, that I'm part of this community. I would be happy anyway, regardless of that, of publishing a book or not. I mean, I've gained so much from this community. It's kind of mind-blowing to me how generous and kind people have been. So I'm floored by it. I was trying to respond to every comment on the video, and there's like 1,000 comments. I spent the whole day, literally the whole day, except for 2 hours of tennis, replying to comments yesterday. And it was just so beautiful. I wouldn't have done anything else. It was so beautiful to have so many just lovely, kind people. And even if they don't buy the book, it's for them to say, congratulations, this is a great achievement, it's just so kind. And I appreciate it more than I can ever possibly say. Yeah.
Well, I think that is, a byproduct of the fact that, as I said, frankly, as I said, you are beloved. And, Travis Baldry, who we had on our previous episode of Page Chewing, said something very profound, if you watched that episode. And he talked about, you mentioned kindness is a choice, and a difficult choice to make. And the people that, display the courage to be kind can also face a lot of adverse, consequences. Yeah. But the thing is, Philip, you're one of those people that, you make that choice to be kind. And I think that it definitely stands out, along with the fact that you're incredibly talented and brilliant and you're an academic and all those things. But I think what stands out the most for a lot of us about you is that you're immensely kind. And I think people are very willing to help repay the kindness, that you show all of us. So I think I have no doubt again that you're going to be quite successful as a writer.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
I also want to say, and I think a lot of people talk about the YouTube comments as being, I've heard people call them cancer before, and it depends on what section of YouTube you are on, of course. Part of being a creator is getting those nasty ones sometimes. But I do think, and when you were talking about spending the whole day answering the comments, I felt that in my soul, because that is why we're here, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever I sit down and I answer my comments, it's not a chore. It's the why I make the video. And I'm just so happy that your comment section provided that to you, because like PL said, it's paying dividends, right, for what you put out there. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you. And I will be buying the book. I'm ready. I'm just spoiler alert, but I'm sure we would also love to have you back on here to discuss the actual books, not just your academic background in the future.
I'm happy to
just
talk
be
to
a
you
joy.
guys anytime. Really, it's a joy to talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. But I would be very honored and privileged to talk to you about the books. If
Yeah.
We absolutely cannot wait. There's so much I know. Looking at the time, I know we're starting to run out of time. There's so much I know we get a chance to get into. There's so much about, especially your how you got into Booktube and your Booktube life. That's something that we really want to touch on. I know, like I said, we're running short of time, but and we definitely want to give you a chance to talk about your writing journey and your books. I just want to say that I don't know how you feel about this, Philip, but now that you're entering this new phase with your published author phase, you're going to be balancing a lot of things. You're going to be balancing, especially self-published writer, promoting your book. You're going to be balancing in the future. I assume you plan to write more books than the 4 you have. You're going to be editing. You're going to be doing all kinds of writer-associated activities that have even nothing to do with writing. So you're already a professor. You have a busy family. So you're going to be even busier, and you have a Booktube channel.
Yep.
So what's the plan to balance, all of these extra things, these great
things? Even at this point.
Yeah, even if what's the plan?
Well, it's the secret, I think, for me at least, is I love all those activities. They never seem like work to me. So I love reading fantasy. I love talking about fantasy. I love the people here that I get to interact with, and I love learning from them. So all of that is just a joy. It doesn't seem like work. And then teaching is the same thing for me. I love teaching. I love being in a classroom. And, so again, it doesn't seem like work. Nothing I do seems like work. I love writing. Writing is just, for me, when I write, I'm sure anybody who has written can relate to this. You could sit there, you might feel like 10 minutes have gone by, and it's like you look up and 3 hours are gone, and you're just like, what? I was so immersed in this world, and that is so wonderful to be in that zone, to experience that, doing anything really. But I experience it while writing, so it doesn't feel like work to me either. It's just all fun. Now, yeah, I do have some limitations in spite of the fact that AP says I don't sleep.
Yes.
I survive on student tears. I don't read as many books as maybe some booktubers who read. I'm in awe of the reading output of some people who. I don't know numbers for everybody, but anything above 50 is like, wow, that's just incredible to me. I can't read that many books in a year because, well, I'm reading other stuff that I'm teaching, and I tend to read slowly as well. And I'm writing and being with my family and playing tennis sometimes. So, so I'm not going to be that booktuber who can read 100 books a year or whatever. I can't do that. And I'm fine with that. It's really more about the quality than the quantity for me. I don't even count. I don't even know how many books I read in a year. I'm guessing 40 or maybe something.
A lot.
Yeah. For this, but I think the secret for me is that it's all a joy. And if it becomes too much, then I need to, cut back on something. So right now I decided that, for example, I'm stepping down as a department chair. It's more important to me to be involved in this community and to be writing and working on that than it is to be a department chairperson. So I decided that takes more time than just being a regular old professor. So I'm going back to being a regular old professor because I value the other things more than that particular role. I love teaching. I'm not so interested in being an administrator, so I can cut that out of my life. I'm going to do it. I don't have ambitions in that direction. I think it's important to know where your bliss is and to follow it, right?
As a fellow teacher, I agree. Yes, there's a joy in teaching that surpasses other parts of the job, I think.
Yeah,
So.
and I commend you, Philip, because it takes a special person to, obviously, taking a step down from a prestigious position. Obviously, being professor is, of course, very prestigious, but the fact that you're willing to do that and make that sacrifice to devote to something that you really love, rather than, I assume, you're stepping down, whether that comes with a nominal salary decrease or whatever, or even just the title. I think that says a lot about you and the person you are, and I think we're only going to benefit from the fact that you're going to be around more with the writing community, and that fact that we're going to get to read your awesome books, and we can't wait.
Thank you, PL.
To bring home the talk about the books themselves, Beth had a great comment. Just in case we don't know, when and where can we pre-order the first book? You did talk about the where, but just in case people missed it.
So I'm publishing through Amazon or the KDP. So they will be available from Amazon. And I do hope to, and I'm looking into this. I've heard, different things about KDP's expanded distribution. So I do want to make the books available to people who are not able to use Amazon in various parts of the world. So I'm trying to look into that, the best way to make that happen, but definitely through Amazon. And I will be, hopefully, I don't know the exact date when people will be able to pre-order, but I will do whatever it takes to make that possible. And I decided that March 21st is the official release date. So I would love for the first book, and I would love to make the pre-orders available maybe a month or so before that. So I don't know exactly when I'll be able to make that happen. Maybe even sooner. It really depends on my artist and all that, and when the cover will be ready. Just about done with the interior stuff. And the map is coming along as well, and that's probably going to be the last piece for the interior. And I'm so excited about the map and the cover. So those are the two last pieces, though, that will fall into place. And once those are ready, I think I can generate a pre-order option, right? I think that's how it works. So I'm going to try to make that happen for people, and I will make a huge announcement. And I'm going to do, just so people know, I'm going to do it. I have a video already filmed with AP doing an analysis of the opening 2 paragraphs. So that is filmed. I'll be releasing it fairly soon. I'm going to have a video with Jack Shepard, the wonderful individual who is designing the map for me. And we're going to go over the various cultural influences that have gone into the place names and everything. So that's going to be a fun video. I'm going to do a cover reveal, and I'm really excited for this because I just was approached by an incredible person who is a creator on YouTube, who has a channel that essentially does music on YouTube. And so it's a music channel. It's pretty big, actually. And I am just floored that this wonderful person would reach out like this. But apparently this person is a fan of fantasy, and you can tell from the music too, actually. So Raven Skjold is the name of the creator. And he's essentially presented me with a song that I will be able to use for, I'm thinking I'll do a cover reveal, kind of a book. What are they called when you do like a preview for a book? There's a term for it.
Book trailer?
Book trailer. That's it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little A book trailer. So maybe I'll do something like a book trailer that might be fun, to have a cover reveal / book trailer type thing. I love the music that Ravensskild created for me. So yeah, just so I have some fun things planned, I hope, in the lead up. So
sounds like the whole package to me.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to try to make it as fun as possible, and I want I don't want to be annoying and obnoxious and overdo it, but I really want to include this community as much as people want to be included in this process. So, and that maybe that is kind of weird, but I feel very strongly that I want, for several reasons, to be open about this process, because I know that a lot of people in this community are writing. And I hope that some of what I learn will be helpful to those people. So that's another reason for really, having a channel at all is really kind of educational, because I know I learn all the time around here. So I'd like that to be a learning experience for people, but also just I feel like it's important to share my joy in this process, and I hope that people will want to kind of celebrate as we get closer to the release. So,
wow, that's amazing. Well, as I know we're wrapping up, can we just get the titles of the books, especially the first book?
Oh yeah,
because it's coming out soon, and what the title of the series, and
yeah, sure. So the trilogy is called the Edan trilogy. And the first book is The Way of Edan. The second book is The Prophet of Edan. That's prophet as in Prophet. And the third is Return to Edan. Okay. So those are the three. And the standalone sequel has a title and everything too. It's going to be a while before that's out, but that's called While Darkness Gathers.
How dare you take longer? You're releasing 3 in 1 year and we don't get a fourth? Philip.
Yeah.
Just to finish off, the final joke that we had here was, will you be adding a middle name initial to make it more author authentic? And it said, Philip Nemesis Chase.
I second that.
Oh, no.
I second that.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought about my middle name is Edward. So
P.E. Chase.
P.E. Chase doesn't quite sound good to me.
P.E. Chase?
So,
P.E.
I was kind of opting out of that one. But
okay.
P.N. Chase.
P.N. Chase sounds okay.
Huh?
Yeah.
Hey.
You have to brainstorm.
But I think I'll just go with Philip Chase, since that's what people know me by around here. So
that is actually the perfect segue to now we know where to find your book. But just in case anyone watching this doesn't know where to find you, the lovely human that you are, where can they find you? What are your platforms? Where should they go for more of you?
This mainly is YouTube. So my channel is Philip Chase, and I do kind of, fiddle around occasionally on Twitter. So I don't really know what I'm doing there. But I somehow have found myself onto Twitter. I'm not active on other social media, really. I do have a Facebook, but if anybody ever tries to friend me there, I look at Facebook once every year, So please don't take offense if you find me on Facebook and you try to friend me. I just don't use it at all. And the other social media I haven't gotten into yet. I know I probably should, right? What's the one that everybody's on? Instagram? Is that
Instagram? There's TikTok.
TikTok.
Oh, TikTok is, I don't know. How do you think I do on TikTok, guys?
Well, you're great at putting those like you did a
struggle. I'd say.
Yeah. But
for anyone in this panel, all three of us.
Yeah, but you did a great. I love what you do with your memes, and you did the whole for Dear Dr. Fantasy. You had me in the little with the rubber ducky floaty, and
oh yeah, I'm sorry, I was so nice to Taylor with that thumbnail.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was waiting for something.
Something mean. I mean, she's just looking beautiful there, and I had the nice, tree in the background. And poor PL, I put him in a rubber ducky.
It was awesome. I loved it.
I did have the unicorn floaty too, so
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there's a little bit of balance there.
Grouping favor.
Okay. Also, PL, if people want to find you, my co-host, where can they find you?
Lurking often beside you and Steve on the amazing page chewing with great guests like Philip and Steve Talks. Yeah, so Steve Talk Books, Taylor and I doing page chewing. You can find me on the wonderful Before We Go blog. Shout out to Beth Tabler, our amazing leader, one of the best blog sites out there where Taylor and I are both assistant editors, and Steve is also a blogger. Steve Talks Books. My website is www.plstore.com. That's where you can find out about the books, about me. The John Kingdom Saga, Book 3, Lord and King, is dropping soon. It's out with the advanced readers right now. They seem to think it's pretty decent, so I'm happy about that. Yeah, actually, it's funny, Philip, you were mentioning Jenny Ward. She's one of my advanced readers. I'm going to have the honor of having her on the cover, and her blurb is better than my whole book. That's the joke. So, I mean, it's, yeah. So, but yeah, so that's me. And of course, my reviews are on Goodreads, and yeah, Twitter is my preferred social media platform. Like Philip, I'm on Facebook, but very infrequently. Same Instagram, a bit more, but not as much. So, but look for me besides Steve and Taylor, because we have a lot of exciting things coming up in page chewing this year, such as having people like Philip on the show.
Yes. Very excited for Page Chewing 2023. I actually do want to make a video about that on my channel, so just a shout out to that when that comes out. But if you are watching this video somehow and don't know who I am, my name is Taylor. My channel is Made Between the Pages. That's where you are right now. You can mostly find me on Booktube and, YouTube. I don't know why I said Booktube there, but you can find me on YouTube, as well as Twitter. Don't even try Facebook. Just don't. So I would say Twitter and YouTube are the best for finding me. You can see me in live content as well on Steve's channel when we do deep dives and page chewing over there. So thank you so much to everyone who came by this episode, everyone in the comments. This is just a delightful discussion. And once again, thank you, Philip, for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you both from the bottom of my heart. You are two wonderful people that I am privileged to know. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk with you. And thank you to everybody in the chat. The comedic relief was actually welcome.
Yes.
So thank you so
much. Of course. So look forward to the next page chewing episode, either on my channel or on Steve's channel. You will see us talk about it on Twitter, on our community tabs. We'll get the word out. So we look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you guys for stopping by. See you.